The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Jill and J. Schlender presiding. Your eyes for the Honorable Judge Schlender.
Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are hearing the case of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, versus Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Easy now. 1999's The Phantom Menace follows the Sith's early schemings to seize control of the Galactic Republic and the discovery of a young boy prophesized to bring balance to the Force. 2019's The Rise of Skywalker sees the Resistance make one last final stand against the Emperor, who somehow again threatens the galaxy.
Somehow. Oh man, I think I know what side our synopsizer is on.
For those of you unfamiliar with our court proceedings, in civil cases like this, the counsel appointed to represent each film will present their case for why their client is the superior movie. And ultimately, the jury will render its verdict as to which is the better film. This decision will hereby stand in all rankings and listicles from now on until the end of time, ad infinitum. Mr. Case Aiken, you are representing the Phantom Menace. You may begin your opening statement.
Ladies and gentlemen of the court, my fellow citizens of the Republic, what we are discussing here is a weighing upon the value of ambition versus craft. For The Phantom Menace is a first draft by a lazy auteur, but here it is opposed to a hacked-together work-for-hire slurry done by a talented mercenary.
Slurry.
The Phantom Menace revels in its failures. We can see its flaws because they are so obvious. Such clear examples where they could have been refined and made good. You see, Phantom Menace is a good movie, buried by mediocre execution, while The Rise of Skywalker is just a mess that is well made. You see, the key point here is that we are not discussing what is the best of the Star Wars movies.
No,
by no means. We are merely discussing which is the worst. And The Rise of Skywalker is a movie that made me, a die-hard Star Wars fan who has spent way more time trying to figure out how to make a real lightsaber than I care to admit, almost give up on the franchise.
It's a kyber crystal.
Wow.
The worst is clearly those Ewok movies, though, right?
Whoa!
Shots fired!
Shots
I will
fired!
not take slander of Ewok movies. The first one's basically a D&D movie, and it's great.
Caravan of courage!
Order in my court. The Ewoks are not on trial yet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aiken. Appearing on behalf of The Rise of Skywalker is Mr. Big Ben Haslar. Please present your opening statement.
A long, long time ago, in a galaxy far away, Exegol was staging an attack. And I watched Rey and Kylo Ren stop the Palpatine threat again after Rian Johnson threw the cannon out of whack. Unlike the Force, reviews weren't with us. They sunk their teeth in, oh so vicious. What was JJ supposed to do after Ryan killed Luke and Snoke too? And Carrie Fisher passed off screen. They brought her back with screens of green. Yet you're all still so mean. That's why I wrote this song. Oh, why must you hate this film? Why? Someday Oscar will win an Oscar. He's one hell of a guy. You'd still trash it even if you were high, though. Phantom is the film that needs to fry. Phantom is the film that needs to fry. Cocaine Bear. Anyway, seriously though. Thank you.
I ignite my lightsaber and wave it in your general direction.
You know, I feel comfortable calling it here. Ben wins. Let's go home.
Cool.
Well, let's go through the motions.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
I wonder, though, what what this film was supposed to do. It was like set up to fail. You can point out problems all day long, but nobody offers solutions. Pitting this against The Phantom Menace, another lackluster Star Wars bookending saga, I put it to you, jurors. The reason that you should roll in favor of my client is George Lucas had a mostly open canvas on which to paint on. Phantom, and he still fumbled the ball with his inability to get good performances out of great casts and introducing characters that everybody despised. Conversely, with Rise of Skywalker, J.J. Abrams had started a painting, and then someone came in and Jackson Pollocked all over his happy little trees and bushes, and it was up to J.J. to sort of fix this painting with the timer ticking. What was he supposed to do given this impossible task? He has to close the Skywalker saga, and Rian Johnson left him with this. He killed like all these main characters. What are you going to do to sort of wrap everything up? JJ still manages to do this while still getting to the heart of what Star Wars is, the heart of what the Force is, while Phantom Menace misses the point entirely with its midi-chlorians, all while wrapping things up. Given those requirements, members of the jury, I say give JJ kudos on a job done.
Thank you.
I wish he had sung that part.
Thank you, Mr. Haslar. Mr. Aiken, you may proceed with your first exhibit.
Well, my opposing counsel brings up the fact that The Rise of Skywalker did, in fact, have a steeper challenge ahead of it. The idea of starting off a franchise that is already well-loved is not nearly as difficult as the idea of wrapping up not just a trilogy, but a trilogy of trilogies, and one that has been so monumentally impactful and also so lucrative for a sinister mouse corporation. The fact of the matter is, it is a greater challenge, but we're not grading on a curve here in terms of the quality of movies. And more importantly, even if we were, there's still a greater deficit in quality between what we were expecting, or at least hoping the successes of The Rise of Skywalker to be, versus what actually came out, versus what The Phantom Menace could have been, versus what it ultimately was. The Phantom Menace is a fun movie that, as I noted in my opening statement, is first drafty. There's a lot of good bones going on there, but poorly written dialogue. Well, you know what? There's poorly written dialogue in The Rise of Skywalker. Well, there's annoying characters. There's annoying characters in both. There's character assassination. Not so much in Phantom Menace, but there is in Rise of Skywalker. There's logical reasons for scenes to occur. Actually true in Phantom Menace, not so much in Rise of Skywalker. There's cool Force stuff. Rise of Skywalker's got that. While there are pros and cons to both, ultimately The Phantom Menace is a fine, if mediocre, entry in the franchise versus The Rise of Skywalker, which is a devastating piece.
Mr. Haslar, would you respond? In particular, he mentioned the expectations of each movie. So I think that would be an interesting point to explore.
Yeah, and as he says, Rise of Skywalker has the steepest of expectations, whereas George Lucas can like sort of set things up on his own tone at his own pace. He has that advantage, and he still fumbles the ball entirely. Right? Like he writes dialogue like, "Are you an angel? This is so Wizard Annie. You'll finish the race, of course." And he still can't get these good performances out of like great actors like Amidala or Natalie Portman, just saying like, "I ask you to help us." No, I beg you to help us. Like you're not
really
invested in anything that's happening here.
That's exactly what she sounds like.
Objection.
It's easy to
she
do.
Is
right?
royalty. She's probably on lithium.
Wait, isn't she 13 years old?
14.
14. Yes.
Okay. Well, that's fine then. Please continue.
Whereas in Rise of Skywalker, like everything these characters do, while the story is rushed, you believe that everything that they're doing is really happening to them. Like everything that Oscar Isaac does is believable. He's just so friggin' charming. But when they're in danger, you believe they're in danger. Whereas like everyone else in the Phantom Menace, they're just like mowing through these CGI droids, and you don't feel like any impact by any of that. Even I would say when the heir apparent to Charles Bronson, Liam Neeson gets killed, like you don't feel anything really. You just like, okay, this feels like a stage play. Whereas when Rey is like calling out to the Force, or when she's facing off with Palpatine or Kylo Ren or any of these people, you believe that it's happening. The only flaw is that it's rushed as hell to get there because it only has 2 hours to tell the story.
All right, thank you, Mr. Haslar. Mr. Aiken, you can continue or redirect any of those points?
Well, when you say that you feel that it's happening, I'll admit that J.J. Abrams is a better director of the actual scenes in terms of having energy and motion to his work. J.J. is fantastic at doing those kind of things. He apes from the best. Whereas George has never been an actor's director. He's an idea person. He's a producer more so than a director. And unfortunately, he was writing, directing, and producing this piece and had no pushback whatsoever. So I will concede that the scenes themselves have less energy, but consider the characters involved. The supporting cast that we had assembled as our main crew of the last trilogy of this 9-part epic mostly fell by the wayside for the entirety of The Rise of Skywalker. Poe had his character assassinated from the stance of being a hotshot pilot who was just so damn charming and had learned hard lessons and was now the heir apparent of the leadership. A realization of a promise that we had with Luke Skywalker that was redirected into his spiritual path towards being a Jedi. Now we get to see that pilot actually go through the full motions and see what that culmination could be, only for him to be reduced to just a drug dealing Hispanic character, which is pretty tasteless to begin with, and to not really have that arc.
Oh, I don't know about that. What about his scenes with Finn? Like they're all buddied up through this whole thing. It's not like that's all he does.
Finn also had his role dramatically reduced over the course of 3 movies.
Well, you know why, of course, and it's because this film was given this where Rian Johnson didn't have anybody together. Rey, Finn, and Poe only meet each other for the first time, sort of at the end of that last film. We didn't have that sort of build up that we have Empire Strikes Back or any of that where the characters all know and love each other. So he has to sort of establish this on the fly. I mean, I don't want to you're saying grading on a curve. I get that, but given those expectations, I say that is. He executed that very well, given that limitation.
Well, and lastly, the last major character of this group, Rose, is completely stripped of being any sort of major part of the franchise. She's just a helper for Leia.
Yeah, we have a lot of players that we're dealing with, and we have a story that we have to sort of cohese together in the moment. So yeah, I think it's regrettable that Rose is sort of sidelined. She was a very disliked character by a very I don't want to give these guys any praise, but a very vocal subset of the fan base just really hated her and hated her and Finn together. So given that if you keep going with that, you're dealt a losing hand if you say, okay, well, let's continue the Finn Rose storyline.
Well, and lastly, I would say that the stakes that are being expressed in this movie, aside from the fact that there are so many parts that just make your eyes roll just involuntarily, such as the spy situation or the Palpatine situation, or even just the threat being just more Death Stars.
Well, no, that actually fits.
Well, sure. This is the challenge of The Rise of Skywalker versus The Phantom Menace, is that The Rise of Skywalker had to feel like it was drawing upon so many things while creating something new. Whereas The Phantom Menace was honestly being challenged to try to create something new within the context of everyone expecting things to be built towards that we were used to. It's the challenge of being a true sequel that ends the story versus a prequel. I think that they are both in that regard coming at the audience with a different cultural cachet and a different challenge to the zeitgeist.
But given that challenge, wouldn't you agree that given that challenge though, he manages to pull on not just the Death Stars, because he builds the Emperor builds the first Death Star in a matter of 10, 15 years. He builds the second one and in a matter of 5 to 10. Wouldn't it make sense to have the next step? Hey, let's put these, as he gets smaller and quicker, let's put these on Star Destroyers. That's as technology progresses, that's the exact next step for him. And it even draws back to Attack of the Clones with the cloning, which is not even a thread that was set up for him, but he looks back and says, okay, this is something I can use as a through line throughout the entire saga to actually make it a Skywalker saga, something that connects all the way from the Phantom Menace all the way to where I am now.
But does it in fact connect from the Phantom Menace all the way to where we are now? really, when you look at The Rise of Skywalker, it is a culmination of the original 3 movies and then the sequel trilogy. It is not harkening back to anything from the original 3, aside from where those are
Oh,
things that
absolutely is. The
explain later.
clones, the dark side is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural. Like, that's all in the prequel trilogy.
That's exactly what he sounds like.
Did I miss the point? I'm sorry.
No, I think
no. Just in terms of how it's coming as a conclusion plotline wise, feels mostly harkening to the original 3. And aside from the fact that Palpatine is himself laying the groundwork in the prequel trilogy, we don't have narrative through line to really tie things together to the earlier movies. There are plenty of things. Part of it is that we have living actors fulfilling these roles, tying it to the original trilogy.
We have Palpatine trying to cheat death throughout it. That's like through all 3 trilogies.
I can see,
right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I can see that point. Like the Rise of Skywalker is not a movie without potential. We are talking about a beloved franchise. Even the worst of them is a movie that I'm glad that I saw in some capacity. The question is, which is the worst of them? And well, I would like to make some assertions in terms of the quality of the Phantom Menace at this time.
Yeah, go for it.
So first off, I would like to talk about the special effects. Rewatching it most recently, I was actually taken aback by how many things work really well, how effective, even with the CG. And again, there is a grading on the curve factor here, this time going the other way, which is that we're talking about an earlier movie. The CG actually holds up pretty well, but more importantly, this is shot on film and actually doing quite a bit of model work that I frankly took for CG at the time because the CG was quite impressive. This is a visually stunning movie. Not to say that Rise of Skywalker is doing nothing. I'm not saying that it's a slouch in this department, but I am saying that I was not impressed by the Rise of Skywalker's visuals as opposed to the Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace was visually beautiful, even if there were areas that don't hold up as well because we're talking about a 1999 movie.
Well, I would actually like to ask you first, like, how did you see the Phantom Menace? Was it in 4K? Was it on DVD? How did you watch it?
When I watched it just now, versus
just recently, yeah,
just recently was on my computer, so it was 1080.
Okay. I had the unfortunate position of watching it in 4K for the first time. And I'm sitting there and like Jar Jar will be on screen and there will be like a bunch of objects and I'll be like, I wonder which fake CGI rubbery object will Jar Jar interact with. And it's always the computer generated one. You could spot it within a second. That's the pit droid that's not really there in that scene. And I would also say that Coruscant's buildings, like he sort of like tries to fade them out, but like in today's like 4K screens, like it just looks blocky and almost PlayStation-y. All these, city buildings that are just kind of floating out there in the background. Now I will say, like from the art direction perspective, probably Phantom is a little bit better. But what JJ does very well is he knows that everyone loved the look and feel of the original trilogy. He loved that these things were really there. So they build real sets. Everything is really there. They don't have like this expansive CGI, landscape behind them in every scene. A lot of this is sort of shot on sets and shot on location.
But the challenge of The Rise of Skywalker from a special effects standpoint is how to best incorporate already established art forms versus the Phantom Menace was created at a time where CG was a burgeoning thing to push the envelope. That has always been a hallmark of Lucas as a filmmaker, to push the limits of the technology that he was working with in terms of what the finished output was. JJ
to his detriment, but yes.
JJ is working with a completed tool set and working backwards to do the cherry picking the best of the best. Again, this is the type of filmmaker he is. He's not creating new things. He is just remixing in interesting ways.
Well, if you watch the original trilogy and you love them, and then you had to watch like these two films, like which one would you gravitate towards just based on the look of it as being, this looks like Star Wars to me?
I think that's hard to say because at the time when the Phantom Menace came out, it was an invigorating experience. It pushed forward quite a bit of what was Star Wars for me. I mean, both movies ape the movies that came before in a whole bunch of ways. There's a ton of narrative and story structure elements that are in Phantom Menace that are directly ripped from the original Star Wars movie. On purpose, but maybe it would have been great if it wasn't. But we do have things like the dogfight at the end of the movie that is so evocative of both of the Death Star runs. It certainly feels like Star Wars, and it certainly feels like a very optimistic era of Star Wars versus the Rise of Skywalker, which it also feels like Star Wars, but it feels like a Star Wars that is tired and old and falling apart.
I mean, you might have a point with the dogfight, but it's just interrupted with Jake Lloyd, and anyone who makes Jake Lloyd feel terrible, like you're a terrible person, like don't hurt the person, hurt the character. But like his whole like this is pod racing and let's try spinning. That's a good trick. It just like this isn't Star Wars. This is made for kids, and he made it for his kids again to his detriment. Whereas like at the Rise of Skywalker's conclusion, that hits the heart, I think, of what Star Wars is. That especially when it's just like ordinary people finally standing up to what is evil, good versus evil, right versus
and
wrong,
declaring that their name is Skywalker.
Yeah, well, that does hurt me a bit. I will grant you that. But as far as that scene goes, and her reaching out to like the Jedi and who have preceded her before, that to me is the spirit of Star Wars that is not at all present in the Phantom Menace, especially with that whole midichlorians thing. Like that makes it like midichlorians. Like if I'm spiritual and I'm reaching out for something, whether they respond to me or not is just based on my hereditary genes. That is not at all Star Wars to me. That is not mysticism and New Age. That is weird science fiction that's been kind of glommed on. And George Lucas didn't have to go that way. Again, he had a blank canvas and he fumbled the ball.
Case, can you address midichlorians? It is the elephant in the room.
Yeah, no,
what are midichlorians?
so there's two elements that I would like to point out. So one, from the in-universe narrative level, there is a question of nature versus nurture, and that is a ongoing conversation in all things in reality, but especially in Star Wars. The idea that is Luke strong enough to face Vader because he is the son of Vader and thus contains his DNA? Is that sufficient? No, you have to have a strength of character that goes along with it. So there is that element innately in the franchise, but from the broader zeitgeist kind of component of this came out in 1999, midichlorians is just a stand-in for mitochondria. It's the powerhouse of the cells, as we all learned.
He said it
in grade school biology. But this was really popular in the late 90s. I mean, if you look at the video game franchise Parasite Eve, the idea of the midichlorian, but the mitochondria being a separate factor coming in was new pop science. Like the idea that the mitochondria were an invasive element that had symbiotically linked with our cells to allow us to move into a more complex stage was a really interesting thing to talk about. And George Lucas is a nerd who existed at the time, and so he was like, that's cool, I would love to talk about that kind of thing under the context of Star Wars as being sort of here's a conduit and here's sort of an explanation of life as we kind of understand it, through some sort of pseudoscience kind of lens that I can throw on it. I get him going for it because it's the same kind of spirituality that you get into people who are into their blood types or shit like that. But in this scenario, it's not great, but it also is on a rewatch very easy just to not pay attention to. Like it only two scenes where we actually like deal with it, and it moves very quick. It does hurt that we have to stop after this in the second scene and have Jake Lloyd ask what are midichlorians and have that whole sequence. I admit that is not great. It's also pretty fast.
Okay. Case, are there any other points you would like to make in defense of your film or against?
Absolutely.
The other?
I would like to talk about the choreography because, my God, of course we have to talk about the choreography. The Darth Maul fight, when it came out, was revelatory. Regardless of your overall feelings about how the choreography of lightsaber fighting should be staged as a broader concept, it is beneficial to the franchise as a whole to have unique fights in each one. And this movie changed the nature of how lightsaber fights had looked up until that point. And I am a big fan of the lightsaber fights that we get in the sequel trilogy. I am not trying to say anything about those being bad. I am merely saying that in 1999, when Darth Maul showed up for the first time, that was mind-blowing to the audience. The choreography looks so damn good. And frankly, it's more impressive than you think once you consider the steps they had to take to make the weapon, a double lightsaber, a thing that had been seen in the Tales of the Jedi Knights and Knights of the Old Republic series at that point in comics, but had never been seen on screen. For the double lightsaber lance to be on screen and be a menacing thing requires a huge degree of skill in its choreography. A double lightsaber is not an easy weapon to use. It is potentially useful, but it is also way more likely to kill you. And for that fight sequence to be as goddamn good as it is just mind-blowing.
Well, let me challenge you. I mean, I agree that the choreography is great. I won't challenge you on that at all. I concede. But that dual blade lightsaber, as cool as it looks, it turns out that it's just two lightsabers glued together. Doesn't that kind of like ruin your conception of what this thing is? Because Obi-Wan like slices it and like, okay, now he just has one fully functioning lightsaber. I think most people kind of like thought that it was like sort of, interwoven and in between, and like it was like, machinery throughout this whole staff. But no, it's just two glued together. Yeah, that how did no one think about doing that before? Why, if he did that, why didn't he just like make it so you could like twist and unlock them or something like that? That would even give him an even greater advantage, right? He could have a separate saber in each hand. It just doesn't make any sense. And why did they even kill Darth Maul? You had this really interesting, cool looking villain. He's like the devil with more horns, and then you just kill him off. So now we're like not excited for like what he might do in like in the sequel trilogy. Not Darth Maul Strikes Back, or sorry, not the sequel trilogy, the sequel film. You won't have Darth Maul Strikes Back. Like all the anticipation there is gone. And why? There's no reason to do that. And Obi-Wan, he had the high ground. That's even worse. Darth Maul had the high ground. And as we have firmly established in Revenge of the Sith, if you have the high ground, you win instantly. So, what up?
I mean, my only real rebuttal to that is that this is a first draft. This is the nature of the Phantom Menace is that it is a movie created by someone who had no actual pushback in an unlimited budget. And we know what the Star Wars was supposed to look like before George Lucas had to deal with a lot of shooting issues and a very limited budget, and just, a lot of things to contend with, such as the realities of having to shoot human actors as opposed to weird green men that he'd originally conceived of. Or the almost fully cybernetic Obi-Wan Kenobi, just because that was that series. He swings big and then has to rein it in to get to something that is like truly innovative, but at the same time plausible. And with the Phantom Menace, he just swung big and had no one trying to rein him back.
All right. Any other points you'd like to make before we pass it over to Mr. Haslar?
Yeah, I do want to bring up the score for the Phantom Menace. So this goes hand in hand with the actual fight choreography, but the Duel of Fates is a monumental entry into the Star Wars canon of music. It is the source of so many AMV music videos online. It is a fantastic track that is so perfect for a fight. And again, in terms of changing the dynamic of what the original trilogy had, which prior to that had slow fights, the other key point about the fights in the original trilogy is that they did not have music behind them. So this was a giant change in the way they presented these types of fights. Now, do the later movies kind of use riffs on the same theme and similar styles of choreography? Yeah, a bit too much. But when this movie came out, this was a totally different style of lightsaber duel with a totally different score that accompanied it, and both parts of that were fantastic. The score is great, and the score for the rest of the movie is really good as well. There's some amazing moments in there. Look at the pod race. Like throughout, the music is just very solid because John Williams is still with it.
Yeah, I agree, and he's still with it in Rise of Skywalker as well. I don't think there's probably a single song that tops Duel of the Fates. Duel of the Fates is great, but as far as like the score being overlaid on everything, well, I'll give you the fight. Like take like that "Force Be With You" theme that da 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 dun dun plays in both movies, right? When do you feel like they're actually reaching out to the Force and that this is like a tense moment with John Williams' score? I would have to argue The Rise of Skywalker takes that cup home.
All right, Case, is there anything else you'd like to present, or are you ready to rest?
I have two final points that I would like to make.
Very good.
And they are interlinked. One, I would like to talk about. Well, you know what? I can make this all one larger point. So the technology at play in this sort of fanciful golden age kind of structure that they're presenting, the Phantom Menace being set in this time so far before, is a time when there's like a sense of craftsmanship and an interest in the machinery that is around you. All of the crafts that you see are so elegant. And part of that, the explanation is that the Naboo are not particularly good engineers, but they love putting lots of artifice on everything that they work with. But this extends to other crafts that we are introduced to in the whole franchise. I think the craft design is really good. And I think their execution in both the dogfight at the end of the movie, where we get the Naboo fighters, which are evocative of these like World War II style, or maybe even World War One. They're bulkier. They feel kind of blocky in a way that the X-Wings don't. But they have this like beautiful kind of like teardrop shape to them that feels like it's something that a society that only cares about aesthetics would really put together. The actual dogfight itself is a really good entry in the franchise. Admittedly, the Jake Lloyd stuff is kind of annoying. It would have been great if it was, a teenager who was a good pilot kind of thing. But the actual dogfight is very good. And also the pod racing scene is really interesting. And when you consider the fact that George Lucas is a car nut, that he has been dying this entire time to put a race in Star Wars. It's so nice that we actually put it here. It's actually really interesting visually. The sequence is probably too long, but at the very least, we have a cool race sequence that breaks up this movie in a good spot. It's nice to have an action sequence like that has stakes involved with like the money that they're going to win and yada yada yada. Is he going to be freed from slavery? It looks good, and the pods are cool looking.
All right, well, Big Ben, I'll let you respond here with your time. You may proceed.
Actually, there's not too much to worry because we did cover most of my points. But to challenge the pod race thing, as you have acknowledged, it is overly long. In fact, when C-3PO says he still has to complete 2 more circles, oh dear! Like I imagine, like the audience just like sitting there, like, oh, well, that was cool for 1 lap. I have to watch 2 more of them. Damn, because it just goes on forever. A point I would like to raise that I would be remiss if I didn't is sort of the comic relief. Jar Jar Binks, one of the most despised characters ever. So despised that George Lucas had to write him out of the second and third movie. Compare that to the comic relief in Rise of Skywalker. Like there's like sort of those natural moments that everyone shares. Poe Dameron and Finn have a lot. C-3PO is kind of the main comic relief in that. And he is nowhere near as annoying as Jar Jar Binks is, with his memory getting wiped, and he's like sort of saying like this guy's his oldest friend and stuff like that. It's never comedy that like takes you out of the moment, whereas Jar Jar Binks does every single time. It just feels insensitive the way this character is sort of on you the whole time. He's a general all of a sudden. Like why would you promote this doofus to general like over all these trained soldiers just to have him up front? This is a character that single-handedly, I would argue, sinks the Phantom Menace. There is no character in Rise of Skywalker that is nearly as annoying.
I would argue that the true comic relief of the Rise of Skywalker is just as annoying, and that is the plot contrivances that just push forward the moments, such as the protractor dagger that it just allows you to be like, oh, if I stand exactly at this right spot, I can see like exactly where I need to go in this scenario, or just simply somehow Palpatine has returned. There is no character that is the comic relief. It is merely
can I challenge you on this?
That pushes it forward.
Yeah, I agree. But with that dagger, at least is like something that's like old, and that's like a lot of what is Star Wars, like this old stuff sort of creeping up onto the present time. So this like Sith lore, all these Sith cultists, this is something that at least sort of like harkens to that. And somehow Palpatine returned. Yeah, that is a dumb line. I will give it to you. But they do explain that how Palpatine returned. It's not like, a lot of the memes are just like, oh, somehow Palpatine returned. Har, har, har. But he does explain how Palpatine returned. He was doing the clone plot the whole time and transferring his soul in between clones. So just focusing on that one line is a little bit of a disservice to the writing that had to be done here.
All right. Would you like to bring up another point, Mr. Haslar, before you rest?
No, I think that's it. Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh, very, Very well, then. Allow me to say that all sides have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Mr. Aiken, you may begin.
Look, in terms of what is a good movie, Star Wars is always a solid B+, if not an A- in some scenarios. The Star Wars franchise is a thing that I have loved for my entire life, that so many have loved for their entire lives. The fact that I am standing here speaking to you all as a podcaster, as someone who started on a network that started as a Star Wars-centric podcasting show that expanded into multiple shows that I would participate in. The fact that I'm here is because it is fun to talk about this weird space fantasy about wizards with laser swords. And
Hell yeah.
I love that I am here now talking about this with you all. So the question is not, is this worth your time? Although I have said some harsh things in the past about The Rise of Skywalker, it is a movie that I am glad that I watched, even if it made me have to take a pause from this franchise, just because the realization that so much of my life had been put into the work of mere mortals, of mere people. The Rise of Skywalker is a squandering of potential. The Phantom Menace is a movie that wasted the potential that it had, but you can see where that potential was. And so these are really interesting bookends of this all. But I will say this. You could remove both of these movies and the franchise would do just fine. There is the Machete Order for those who enjoy just watching it from a perspective of the original Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope from 1977 is the start of the franchise, introducing you to everything. And you can watch that, then Empire, and then Episode 2 and 3, and then Return of the Jedi. And it works so well. And then the sequel trilogy, you know what? The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi work pretty well as a duology. You could have a 7-part movie that way, and it would be totally fine. So, do you need these two? Well, you know what? I can live without Rise of Skywalker, full stop. But I would feel bad to lose out on the Darth Maul fight, to lose out on the pod racing scene, to lose out on the foundation of some very interesting larger characters, like Ewan McGregor specifically as Obi-Wan Kenobi. He has continued to play the part for years now, for decades from the starting point. And this was an interesting spot to see him take on the role. I love this franchise, but I can live without The Rise of Skywalker in a way that I cannot The Phantom Menace.
All right, thank you. Mr. Haslar, you may present your closing statement.
Jurors, I won't be allowed to accompany you and be your conscience when you venture behind those very real deliberation doors. So I want to ask yourself something. What is it that you love about Star Wars? Do you love the idea of the Force being something spiritual that you can call out to in times of need? Well, I'd argue Rise of Skywalker imbues that more than the Phantom Menace does. Do you love that it creates a universe brimming with adventures and strange and exotic locations? Again, Rise of Skywalker does that, from the creepy Sith cult of Exegol to the shattered relics of Lost World battles, makeshift do-it-yourself rebel bases to clean authoritarian starships. They all fit right up against that original trilogy, and not the CGI-heavy world that force a jarring transition when we finally see, in Episode 3, when he starts showing up on the ships that show up in that original trilogy. Light side versus dark side, good versus evil. Again, Rise of Skywalker over Phantom. This film understands the spirit and mythos better. Both films are lackluster in comparison to the original trilogy, but only one was against the ropes from the start, but still endeavored to stay true to the timeless themes, while this other one just keeps shooting itself in the foot. Thank you, jurors.
All right, thank you, Mr. Haslar. Members of the jury, Mr. Maynard Banks, Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, and Mr. Now This is Podcasting, Ryan Luis Rodriguez.
I love that one.
You have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine which film is the superior movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
Right this way. Always 2 deliberation doors there are. No more, no less. That one and, the courthouse's only bathroom on the other end of it.
All right, a lot to think about. I can't remember going into two movies that we've had to watch for this show where I was less excited than these two. Mostly because I've seen them so many times. So I
No,
was unexcited.
I have to agree with that. I did not want to revisit either one of these movies, and
Neither did I.
Sadly.
Let's hear from Ryan first.
Well, I look at these movies as the vomit draft versus the draft that makes me want to vomit. Like, Phantom Menace is interesting in that nobody was telling George Lucas what to do, and this is exactly what he came up with. Whereas Rise of Skywalker is everybody telling JJ what to do, and him still shooting himself in the foot while doing it. I hate it for the same reason that people hate Marvel movies, whereas that it's jokey, it's fan servicey, it's repetitive, it's contradictory of whatever came before. Everything that's meaningful is undone within minutes. And I bring up C-3PO, who supposedly is losing all of his friends with the purging of his memory, and then he gets it back 20 minutes later. Chewbacca is killed, supposedly, and then 10 minutes later, he's back on screen. It's like, just commit to something. If you want to make me feel bad about Chewbacca, kill him. Don't bring him back immediately. Same thing goes with the C-3PO.
Spy subplot, too.
Yes, the spy subplot is terrible. But the amazing thing for me is that I love Last Jedi. And it's amazing to know that The Rise of Skywalker is 10 minutes shorter than Last Jedi, but it feels a million times longer. Like, I had to pause this movie every 10 minutes just to make sure that I had less time left. And it honestly, it felt like it wasn't going to happen. It was extremely distressing rewatching it for this podcast.
Well, how distressing is it going to be for One Track Mind?
Well, I'm never going to do Rise of Skywalker because there is no commentary, thank God. But I've already done Phantom Menace, and it was already one of the most painful experiences of my life having to dredge that back up.
For Phantom Menace, now, who did the commentary? Was it Lucas or
Lucas and what's his name, Dennis Muren, and all these special effects guys? It's a great commentary. But unfortunately, not a very good movie.
So what are your thoughts on Phantom Menace then? You made how you felt about it.
I hate Phantom Menace. It's a gentleman's four.
Skywalker.
But there are moments of beauty in Phantom Menace, and I bring up Duel of the Fates especially. It's such a well-crafted sequence that reminds you of how dialed in Lucas could be when he truly commits to his art form, as opposed to being there because everybody expected him to be there. And Duel of the Fates is a remarkable sequence that is unfortunately undone by the rest of the movie. But if I'm comparing the two movies, it's a gentleman's 4 versus a gentleman's 3. And I have to unfortunately side with Phantom Menace in that respect. And believe me, no one is more shocked than I am to be throwing in for fucking Phantom Menace. But that's just the situation we find ourselves in.
Schlenzo, let's hear from you.
Well, I have to agree with you, Mr. Bangs, right off the top. I was not looking forward to either movie. There's something... I feel like Star Wars can no longer make deposits of joy in my life. It can only make withdrawals. And I really feel like I'm just... Even the original trilogy, when we did New Hope...
Got to be almost Empire, overdrawn now, right?
Oh, yeah. When we did New Hope versus Empire, I'm like, these are both not really great. I mean, C-3PO is just as annoying as Jar Jar Binks, just right off the top.
But in this movie, like I know you don't like him in Empire, but C-3PO in Rise versus Jar Jar.
Oh no, I think Jar Jar's still probably worse if we're going to do that 1-to-1, which we should.
Is what we're doing here. Where have you been for 44 minutes and 8 seconds?
Oh, where indeed? Someplace happier. Anyway. My point is looking at, so I think when we look at these case to case with case, it really, I think it was interesting that both of them thought that there were higher expectations put on episode 9 as opposed to episode 1, because episode 1, I mean, everyone was so hyped for that. So I thought that was interesting.
That's a good point.
That way. Yeah.
I
think Phantom Menace ended up being the bigger letdown in so much as I went into this last movie with zero expectations.
Correct. Yeah,
So
I
that was interesting.
I think that was
they
maybe
saw it the other
Ben's
way.
point, or
Yeah.
I think they both conceded the point that they thought
Yeah.
the pressure was higher on Rise of Skywalker, and I didn't think so. I'd say,
I didn't think so
Phantom
either,
Menace,
yeah.
people were lined up for months, basically. Like they canceled
No,
work.
not basically. They were.
Yeah.
They were.
lined up for
They
months.
canceled work at a bunch of places just so people would go see this. It was a huge event.
My dad got the
And-
day off work. And took
Yeah,
me to
a
go
bunch
see
of people
the
did.
midnight screening, which he did not
Yep.
need to get a day off work to do that, but he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe because he was thinking he was going to go back all day the next day. And people must have still done that anyway because it is still the most lucrative of the films. But I think the pressure much higher on Phantom Menace, like 17 years or whatever it was since a movie had been out. That pressure.
Oh, yeah.
22 years. 22
Yeah,
years.
it was a long time.
99 from 80.
From 77. 22 years.
No, the last movies
77?
in the 80s is Return of the Jedi.
Oh, okay.
Return
I'm
of the Jedi
thinking
was
of
like
the first.
82, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Oh,
So-
yeah. That's why I said 17. Yeah.
16 years.
Whatever. But,
Well, to say nothing of the extended universe that happened in between, because now that's not canon anymore either.
okay.
So
Mhm.
anyway, I thought we had two strong cases, and I honestly, as I'm listening to them, I thought Case was just conceding a little too much to Ben, and I think if you watched episode 9 like on mute, like it does look better than episode 1, and I know there's a time difference and everything, and it's like I just didn't hate it as much as I did the first time I saw it because I just didn't have any energy left to hate it. But rewatching episode 1, and just seeing like how it just doesn't look good. It's not cohesive. The pod race, which I was a long defender of for so long, Ben's right. It is just way too long. It's like, man, what the hell are we doing here?
I like the
So,
Padres.
Well,
I-
I gotta say, I
Yeah.
rewatched this time from a VHS cut because I wanted to see Puppet Yoda, which no one talked about at all. But I wanted to see Puppet Yoda, and Puppet Yoda looks fine. That one picture that everyone shows Puppet Yoda, it's like a single frame taken out of context. Most of the time, Puppet Yoda looks fine and is now officially to me way better than CGI Yoda in the first movie. So bring back Puppet Yoda. He's fine.
He's in the DVD. He's in the DVD.
Yes, he's in the original DVD, but that's what I wanted to bring up. They extend the pod race on the DVD release
Yes.
and
Yes.
all subsequent releases since, but on the VHS, it's not as long. So it wasn't quite so bad, which was interesting.
Maybe that's why we liked it when we were
Very
kids.
true.
I don't know.
Yes, I think it was
Yeah.
better in theaters, and I think the first time you're seeing it, you're glued. Like theatrically, that slapped, and everyone talked about the pod race for months.
I love
So-
the Padres.
Oh, and the Duel of the
Padres.
Fates too, which was a very fair point. I mean, you have to concede Duel of the Fates is
Yep.
excellent. But I'm going to keep things interesting. I'm going with Rise of Skywalker today just because I have no love to give for Star Wars anymore. And if nothing else, Rise of Skywalker may have scuttled the series. So I take it for that.
Some points that Ben raised that I really enjoyed, that there were actually a lot of sets used. I did enjoy that.
That was a good point.
There's a lot of
compared-
sets in Phantom Menace. There's a lot more sets than there are in the prequels.
Yeah, but I'm saying I kind of like his CGI landscape point and how blocky in PS3 it was in Phantom Menace, I thought was pretty good compared to, I'm thinking of like all the nice sets in the Death Star, like that are kind of more close up, not the farther shots, but, and how it really brings normal people together. I kind of like that stuff. So they both brought some really good haymakers that way. Like, why did they kill Darth Maul? It actually made me extra angry this time because it doesn't make any sense. He could be Christopher Lee's part in the next couple movies. He could have just killed Qui-Gon.
He's in the
and
cartoons now.
Yeah, I know that they've salvaged him and stuff, but like there should have been no reason for him to go away at all,
He's in
despite
Solo,
loving
too.
Christopher Lee. That said, man, Rise of Skywalker, I hate that they got rid of all my favorite characters. I hate that they walked back a bunch of things. I don't mind what they did with Luke, but a lot of the other stuff I can't stand that they walked back. And to me, the biggest point was something Case had said. If I didn't ever have to watch either of these movies, I wouldn't care about Skywalker at all. But I would be just slightly bummed that I couldn't see the pod race or Darth Maul again, because this is the only movie that gave me them. So I'd be slightly bummed about that. and it's probably the only reason I would rewatch it instead of Machete Order. And with that in mind, and even though I can't say it, Puppet Yoda wasn't even brought up, unfortunately. So that sucks. So I cannot put him in my vote, although I love Puppet Yoda. But he's not in my vote, but still, I'm going to go Phantom Menace.
All right.
Well, let's get out there and tell that very handsome judge.
All right. You know, we should have done a joke about me using a force power to make you read the verdict. I suppose I still could.
Yes,
Mr. Foreman.
You could.
Mr. Foreman, you want to read me the verdict now?
I want to read you the verdict now. In the case of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, versus Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, we find in favor of The Phantom Menace.
Boo.
I'm not booing, I like Puppet Yoda, but...
Okay. All right, the verdict is so rendered. In celebration, we will immediately have the Boss Nass Disney Plus series worked up. I think that's going to be great, right? Yeah, everyone
That's
wants to
on
see how
you.
Boss
That's
Nass
on you,
became the
Case.
boss. Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
God damn it, wouldn't we all want to see a Brian Blessed-led Disney show?
We're gonna get it, and there we have it. Court is adjourned.
This is Grumbly Grumblerson, the angriest reporter at the Gabagool Gazette, dismayed that two guys talking for an hour about a subject that ensures that we will remain virgins forever. Ben Haslar, you had the worst movie this week. Explain to the court how you summoned the gall and how you feel about the jury's verdict.
Well, justice was probably served, but that jury, they made me sad with all their hate. They have surrendered to the dark side. I enjoyed my discussion with Case. It was. I'm glad that one person here at least liked talking about Star Wars, even the lackluster ones. So it was a lot of fun. I hope people considered some of my points against Rise of Skywalker, because while I do think Phantom Menace is probably slightly better, I think that, Rise of Skywalker sort of has more going for it than people give it credit for.
And here comes Case Aiken, defender of Jar Jar Binks. How did everything shake out for you?
That's on your tombstone now.
Oh man.
I'm always happy to talk about Star Wars. I think that it is a fun franchise that allows for a lot of just weird kind of conversations, and this was a really fun one. Ben brought some really good points. What's wild is that once the actual trial was over and the jury started talking, I remembered all the notes that I forgot to take that I'd been talking to myself over the last week.
I was going to talk about Puppet Yoda. I really was.
Puppet Yoda, Chewbacca's death. There's so many things that I was angry about. I generally try not to bring up too much of my angry points when I make. I feel like positive ones are starter ones, but there's a lot to hate about the Rise of Skywalker that I just didn't bring up tonight because the notes I cobbled together were mostly about the positive ones, and I wanted to focus on that. But yeah, lots to hate, and thank you guys for making me think about how much to hate about this thing.
That's what we're here for.
But that hate is born out of love, because the Star Wars franchise is ultimately a fun thing about wizards for kids, and they're both kids movies, and it's fine. The jury found the right side on this one, where I'll take silly over banal.
There you have it. 2 idiots, 2 terrible movies. Let's go back to the courthouse. Grumblerson out.
Oh, Grumbly.
Wow.
He's given into hate so
He's
long ago.
really angry today. I don't know what happened.
He's
just
Darth Grumbly.
He's so grumbly, that Grumblerson.
Yeah.
Oh, we love him though.
Man, glad I probably won't ever watch Rise of Skywalker again. Which...
I will never watch it again. I can guarantee you, I will never watch this fucking
I don't
movie
think I'll ever watch
ever
Star
again.
Wars again, unless Shadows of the Empire gets made into a movie. Not a series, Disney Plus, if you're listening. I don't want that. Just make a nice movie. Hour and a half.
Dylan, you know that's not happening.
I
It's
know.
Not happening. Get over it, buddy. Not
But
happening,
imagine
man.
if they did.
I can see them
Imagine
doing
they
a
make
really...
Shadows of the Empire. into like a series or a movie or whatever, they would do like that whole CGI de-aging thing of like all Luke and all those characters. Would you want to watch
As
it in that
long
way?
as we get to see Dash Rendar, it'd be okay. And
Well,
Shizor, are you fucking kidding me? I would love to see
Exactly.
Shizor in live action.
Well,
That's
imagine if they,
amazing.
instead of doing live action, they did like a really like AAA quality video game re-release of like with like huge
Oh, yeah,
cutscenes.
get
I would
Square
even
Enix to do
take
it.
that. I would
I
take
would
that
take
at this
that,
point.
I'm taking
I'd
like a
gladly
Baldur's
take that.
Gate level like beauty, like in terms of like the cutscenes and like the.
Oh, that'd be
trade-offs.
excellent.
Like,
No,
yeah, hell yeah,
absolutely.
do that.
Shizor, she sells seesaws by the seashore, right?
Yes, it is like a corrupt, like runs like a factory too or something. It's a whole
okay,
thing.
now I'm like make this the spiritual like successor to the Knights of the Old Republic series, and like and a remake of of Shadows of the Empire as like kind of like a Mass Effect kind of thing. And I think that would actually be a really fun Star Wars thing that would bring a lot of people back into the franchise.
Well,
now
I
that
don't
it's
think the movies
Legends
are going to do it.
continuity. Just bring it back.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah,
No one's gonna care.
I
No
don't
one's
think the
gonna mind.
movies are going to do it. I think, like, I tell you, when they just made the Zahn trilogy, not the official trilogy, you have this perfect trilogy that you can make fantastic movies out of, and instead we got this slop that was episodes.
Well,
what was it, 9, 10, and 11?
All the
I remember
characters were
when
like
they might
a bit younger,
do
though,
that.
right?
I remember when
All
they
the characters are
announced
younger.
that Richard E. Grant was going to be in Rise of Skywalker, and immediately people thought that he was going to be Thrawn.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately when I heard that, I was like, yes, fuck yes, give me that. And then they just make him some random guy in the Empire. I'm like, okay, whatever.
They
What are you
did.
gonna do?
And why are they even? They're not even the Empire because the Rebellion won. So the Rebellion's the government. So like the First Order, they're the actual resistance. It's all upside down. Ugh, I hate it.
No, at some point they
It's all
did take
terrible.
over. It like you're already
terrible.
seeing the other side. But I want to hear more about what Case is doing in his life. Case, what are you up to?
What are
keeps you busy?
non-Star Wars things you're doing?
Oh god, but I love the Star Wars things.
Yeah, some of the Star Wars things are
I'm
fine
not
too.
doing
Whatever, if
enough
that's
of
something you're
them these
doing.
days. No, so I'm a recent dad is one of the big ones since the last time I was on here.
Yay!
I've got a
Being on this show will make you have children. I can think of at least 2.
Oh my god!
oh god.
Yet I'm in every episode and nothing.
It's too much, Ben. That's a problem.
So that has
I overdosed.
limited some of the output of stuff that I've been working on of late because it is it does take up a lot of your time, and especially when you're a night owl and your whole like existence is built around like, oh yeah, well I can power through until like 4 a.m. working on a thing and get enough sleep. You're not going to get enough sleep because the baby's going to wake up the second that you try to go to bed, and that's just how it goes. But when I was getting better sleep and just in general in life, I host a bunch of podcasts and I put out some videos, and that's the general gist of stuff I do. And also I work on Star Trek fan films. So we'll start with that and work our way the other way. So I work on a series called Starship Farragut. Specifically, we are working on one called Farragut Forward, which is us jumping from doing TOS style fan films to doing the like 80s like TOS movie era style fan films. So we're doing the Monster Maroons. We're doing like a cool story about the characters that we had on the
Bigger wigs.
Bigger wigs, bigger wigs. But
Did you do what the TOS did, right? Like they were all like one crew together. Then you're like next genning that, not next genning, but movie, like putting them on the same ship.
We're making that time jump. So and seeing where they all are, and it's
is everyone like a captain now? Yet they're still like working ops like they are in the movies.
No, we actually were like deliberately trying to like take care of that one. So characters who were like already commanders, like yeah, they're captains of ships, but like characters who were not are different spots on different ships all over.
One captain should have been busted all the way down. Like way demoted.
I don't want to give any plot points away for people.
Yes!
Series.
It's not really a thing that happens. They would just discharge them.
But so
unless they're in deep
filming,
space,
we've done quite well in terms of getting all of our like set stuff really shot. There's still a bit more to do, but that's mostly location shooting at this point. And so that's really cool. And that was the thing that we were crowdfunding the last time I was on. So I just wanted to give an update on that. So we're set to continue. We were delayed a little bit because of the SAG strike, but now we can keep going, so we're looking for when the weather gets a little bit warmer.
Are you still collecting funds, or are you?
Congrats.
The
man.
Indiegogo is still running, so if you check out Farragut Forward, you can still donate. But we did hit our goals, so we're all in that regard.
Well, tell people where you can find it then.
So if you just search for Farragut Forward, Farragut FARRAGUT forward on Indiegogo, you can find that. Or if you just search for that on YouTube, you can see we have the prologue video, which is like the first scene of the piece on there, so you can check that one out. Or you can see any of the previous TOS era stuff we did. I would highly recommend The Price of Anything or The Crossing. Those are really fun ones. So yeah, that's Starship Farragut. If you like classic Star Trek, there's really cool people doing a lot of these kind of ones. There's a whole bunch of great series. This is just the one that I'm working on, so I'm shouting them out specifically. And there's some drama with some of the ones, so I don't want to like go too far and shout out any particular ones besides that, because apparently Star Trek nerds love their drama, and it's like kind of hilarious to watch sometimes.
Actually, that could never happen within continuity.
I have been standing on like a perfect recreation of the set of the Enterprise and hearing people get into those like kind of arguments. It's amazing.
When exactly did they turn the buttons from orange to green? Excuse me.
Hey,
oh god!
But Galaxy Quest tells us it pays off, dude.
That's true. But so that's the film style project I'm working on. Video wise, so I do most of the videos for the Certain POV Media channel for YouTube, which is the YouTube channel for my podcast network. So those are for the most part clips of shows that I work on, and a couple other like side projects that I usually am involved with. There are other projects on there. So we've got a series called Side Quest where we do videos of people just raving about a video game for like 5 to 15 minutes that I in the editor on, but it's like fans of Fun and Games, which is another show on the network, can submit their entries into this list. But then the series that I am more active on is a series called Superman Analogs, where I do a quick explainer for like 5-ish minutes on characters that are, kind of modeled after Superman or like Superman in some way. And I can make a pretty broad argument for how a character would qualify. It's usually just an example or a chance for me to gush about a superhero that I think is cool. And then for the podcast that go along with that, I am the host of Men of Steel, which is a Superman and Superman adjacent podcast, where we talk about all kinds of stuff that's either Superman or like stuff that's like Invincible or The Boys or whatever. Ryan's been.
We just recently did Superman 3 on here,
which is a
sure
really fun one.
Yeah, I'm sure you've listened to it.
Absolutely.
Oh yes,
and of course we all know that's the one that gave people nightmares. It's the one that
we bring it up,
traumatize people, and yeah, that it's a delightful movie to talk about when you want to talk about like just like how weird a Superman movie could be.
Is it guilty or not guilty in your mind?
Well, he'll know because he listened to the episode because the episode's already out.
In your mind. In his mind.
Okay, I listened to the episode. I don't remember how it was found.
It's not yet, Case. It's not really out. It's not actually been released yet.
You'll be able to listen to it later, Ryan.
Well, I was convinced. I was like, I've listened to every episode. I must have like. Anyway, I would say not guilty overall. But there's some big like asterisks after that.
Yeah.
Yes,
no angel.
And everyone will know how that ties in with our actual verdict, which I remember right now. But
yeah, so Ryan's been on for we talked about Superman Doomsday. What was that, like a year and a half ago at this point?
About that, yeah.
Which was a lot of fun and kind of led off into us doing the entire Death and Return of Superman arc, like doing like almost every bit of tie-in media for that, and that was a fun series. And then the other show I host is Another Pass, which is a movie podcast where we talk about how movies could have been fixed at the time of production. And as we were talking before we started rolling, the show actually started doing Star Wars, and so we actually started with the prequels. These movies have always been like a special place in terms of like that kind of like picking apart and sort of like figuring out what makes a good movie and like how you look at this like larger property kind of franchise thing, and try to like extrapolate all the details both proactively and retroactively, which has been a really rewarding kind of game that I play with my guests. Like intellectually speaking, I just really enjoy it as a task. So Ryan, you've been on, Maynard, you've been on, and I need to get
I see how it is.
I understand Snub and Dylan, but you should get Ben on there.
I gotta get you guys on.
I see.
Not Dylan. He does. We see.
Yeah. But it's a really fun series. And then every 5 episodes we look at movies that had a lot of trouble in production and then stuck the landing. So like we did like Predator, and we talk about like, isn't it amazing that this movie is made at all, considering they're all just actively shitting themselves because they all had diarrhea because of Mexican water and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then you get into the fact that Jean-Claude Van Damme was supposed to be the Predator and he quit, and like all this like wild stuff going on behind the scenes, and it's just like fun to do some research on like a movie that like almost didn't get made or almost was going to be way worse, and then like, oh, that was clever, oh that was that's cool that they like pulled it off, they got a win as an underdog. Like that it's a really rewarding like research component of the show that is a lot of fun.
I like that. Now, Case, we always ask for recommendations from our guests for movies that you think people should see. You obviously have a big backlog that you can draw from. So what is a movie that you think people should see?
And don't say Superman 3.
Well, now you got me thinking that I should say one.
It's just
like,
Superman 3. That's all you can say.
No. I'm going to go with
all you can
Jupiter's
think
Ending, which is a Wachowski fever dream of a movie that is not good. I need to preface with that part. But when you take it from the perspective of being like, oh yeah, this is the people behind the Matrix doing like a goofy space opera, it's a lot of fun. Like we end with like a sequence where like our dog knight is fighting a dragon in like the fire pits of hell. And that's cool that we get that. And like, man, the Wachowskis can do some really cool action sequences. Like the fight over Chicago, which I think is like a oneer or very close to it, is just really, really well choreographed. And damn, there's a lot of energy. And that's the kind of like balls to the wall energy that like Phantom Menace really needed to like be a great movie. It doesn't have that, but it has cool ideas. And if it had those ideas, but that kind of energy, that would be, you'd be there. So that that's
on our wish list. It's been on our wish list for a while.
I would love to do Jupiter Ascending. You fucking kidding me? I'd fucking love that movie.
There you go. Call out to the whole world. Yeah. Somebody's got to do that.
And he's the dog man is fighting a dragon. You neglect to mention that the dragon is wearing a leather jacket.
Wow, Case, how could you fucking not mention that?
It's so fucking cool, man.
I know. Hey, and then he hits a jukebox and it starts playing. Yep. Big Ben, what have you got for us?
Did you know that George Lucas ripped off Akira Kurosawa? Well, no, that's not really fair or accurate. But nevertheless, it is my pleasure to recommend the films that was one of the direct inspirations for the space saga we all know and love, which is 1958's The Hidden Fortress. And right off the bat, you can see the various elements that Lucas was pulling from as we sort of focus on 2 comic relief characters who are bystanders viewing a much larger war, much like C-3PO and R2-D2. But the similarities don't stop there. We have a headstrong princess who can hold her own, leading a resistance from a hidden base against an empire. You also have Japan's men of all men, Toshiro Mifune, playing an old master of martial arts, squaring off against his young student, turned dark side with all of those signature screen wipes and jagged landscapes. It's not Kurosawa's finest in my mind, but like Miyazaki or pizza, even a lackluster one is still very enjoyable. So if you're a fan of Star Wars, it's fun to point your finger at the screen like Leonardo DiCaprio in those memes, or Captain America saying, I understood that, in some sort of nerdy Easter egg hunt. Highly recommend.
I do got to see more of those. And you had a whole samurai movie night, and you didn't invite any of us to your samurai movie night, Ben. Thank you. Oh, we were invited? I saw your samurai. I saw your samurai movie night post. You can't hide from me.
Oh, you show up and you're always invited. You show up, I'll put a samurai movie on.
Schlenzer, what have you
like
got?
it. Well, as you know, Maynard, I don't often make it to the cinema. But when I do, it's because
You're
I
banned.
have the kids. Well, yeah, but I put on the trench coat and the fake mustache over my real mustache. It's a whole thing. Anyway, so I was delighted to watch a family-friendly feature called Migration. It's a 2023 animated film from the guys that are not Disney Pixar. It is very refreshing to watch a simple story about a nuclear family going through an adventure and getting closer along the way, all while growing as characters. It is very much aimed at kids, but parents can breathe a sigh of relief that it is not hot garbage and will be pretty timeless. Currently, it's only in theaters, but I'm sure by now, when you are listening to this in 2026, it is streaming into your brain chip on demand.
It'll be on Peacock. It'll be on Peacock.
Son of God. Sorry. I was going to say Son of Godzilla is my favorite nuclear family.
That was what I think. He said nuclear family, and then he said, and allows them to grow. Oh, really? As characters.
Yeah, so close.
Yeah, so they're all ducks. And what's the name
really
of that?
the lead there?
Yeah, well, it's an anime movie. What's the name of that main guy? Ryan, help me out here. The Indian actor. He's a funny guy.
Kumail Nanjiani.
Yes, he has found his calling as playing a nervous father duck. I mean, he is very, very well casted and does a very good job as the daddy duck in this movie. The best role I've ever seen him in, or heard him in this case.
Yeah, that's fair. He was in one of our movies.
Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates. He's
That's
in
the
there.
And the Eternals.
Oh, God, he's been in
also
two.
The Eternals. Yeah, that's right.
Ryan, what have you got for us?
For my recommendation, I wanted to endorse a television series, but I've done that before. So instead, I'm going to cheat a bit and recommend the feature-length version of that show, 2015's regular show, The Movie. Lately, I've been undergoing a comfort binge in times of great sorrow, and regular show, with its delightful characters, deliriously left-field story swings, and outstanding world building, eventually leading to my bawling my eyes out during the finale, heaving ugly sobs. This movie is like that, but for 80 minutes. Mordecai and Rigby time travel yet again. Jason Mantzoukas shows up as an evil gym coach. Things get weird. It's great. Regular show, The Movie, is not currently streaming on Max, where the entire 8-season series can be found. Made more ironic by the fact that the secondary villain of the end run is the personification of streaming, but you can buy or rent it on Apple TV, even if it would work better narratively, preserved in proper continuity, whatever.
Oh, so it's like Transformers the movie. They broke a season up with it?
It actually aired during the middle of the 7th season, but it lines up perfectly if you watch it properly.
Oh, fantastic. I kind of like that show. I just can't stand the voice of Mordecai. That guy is not a good voice actor.
Well, he's the creator.
He had to put himself in. You could tell. It was
a show that we tried to get the kids to watch, and I don't know how much
they liked it. No, we watched a bit of it.
I'll send us on home. My recommendation may not appear to be related on the surface, but I assure you, as always, I will come through with a thin yet palatable connection to my recommendation, 2023's Killers of the Flower Moon. That's no flower moon. Okay, that one doesn't count.
That's not the connection, right?
No. That one won't count. That's a freebie for you, though. Based on a nonfiction book by the same name, it details the series of murders that occurred in the 1920s in a conspiracy to secure oil rights on Osage Nation land. Much to director Martin Scorsese's chagrin, I miss seeing this film in theaters, but still caught it on the big screen, projected against my living room wall. And even though that's only like 145 inches, sorry, Marty. That said, the visuals were meh. It's a period piece set in Oklahoma, and as we all know, color wasn't invented till 1962. And I believe it's still yet to have made it all to all of Oklahoma, even today. So most of the movie is brown. So don't be sad if you had to catch it at home, because the story is good. Because I assume a lot of it is mostly true, like movie true, sort of true enough. The cast is also terrific. I can sell you with just 3 words, Schlenzo.
Yes.
Prosecutor John Lithgow.
You got me. I'm watching it.
In case I can sell you, but it'll take 4 words. Defense attorney Brendan Fraser.
Okay.
Since it's a Scorsese movie, we had to cram Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio in there too. They do a fine job, although I never really lose either in their roles. And on a down note, Leo never really loses the intelligence in his eyes. If his character Ernest Burkhardt is if he's not a total idiot, then he's a righteously unlikable fellow. And I don't think that's the movie's point. I'll have to decide on a rewatch, but it was very long. It was like 3.5 hours. Anyway, however, I think Marty would benefit from looking to less familiar performers in the future, a point proven by his casting of Lily Gladstone as the female lead who completely steals the show. And did you know Lily's inspiration for becoming an actor? That's right, Return of the Jedi. She, quote, wanted to be an Ewok, and that's what started all this madness, end quote. See, I told you I'd get a connection. Ben. Killers of the Flower Moon is currently available to watch in your home on your 140-inch screen, if applicable.
I saw it in the IMAX without one bathroom break. True story.
God, you're a better man than
I took one bathroom break, but I also did see it in IMAX.
I did not. See, I don't think I would have missed anything seeing it bigger. And although it claimed a lot of practical stuff, there is CGI. Like, there is CGI.
No, I agree with you. I think it's a at-home movie, too.
You can see it at home. It's all right. Yeah. Did you see that one, Case? You haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it yet.
A defense attorney, Brendan Fraser.
Compelling argument.
Right, exactly.
You spoiled it, though. Like, that was sort of a surprise, and you spoiled it.
I mean, it's on the IMDb. He's like the 5th guy on the cast list. You know, it's like right on the top.
He only
of
appears for like 8 seconds, and then he's gone.
No, he has at least 2 or 3 full scenes. Absolutely, he does. He does plenty.
In a 3.5 hour movie.
Yes, but it barely feels like 3. Flies right by. And with that, that's how long this episode's been. We are all out of show. But we want to thank our guest, Case Aiken, for joining us. Thank you so much, Case.
Thank you for having me.
You're 2-0. Once again, your case wasn't Aiken. And we hope you'll be back next time. And we hope everyone else will join us again, too, as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
Puppet Yoda.
Yes.
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.